Greetings, welcome back to Black Bear News, where we are discussing abrupt climate change. I am trying to get in another video before I have to go to work. I have very, very little time, so I'm gonna try and just steam through some things. It's getting a little warm here. If I look a little wilted, it's because it's hot. I want to start out with some. There were so many great comments and so much good feedback from the last couple videos. I just couldn't even. I spent literally all morning commenting or replying to comments and just kind of like looking at stuff, and which I didn't actually have time for. But there was just so much feedback. So thank you guys, as always, for sending me so many great articles and things to read and things to look at. I'm going to read a couple comments first. This is from Andreas Hofer. I'm sorry, Andreas, I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, or Hofer. Dumb people only value present things, but we have to try to value also the future harm our decisions have as a consequence. For example, is it really ethical to help breeding unsustainable populations of humans, which will lead to future massive famine? If freedom of choice means that everybody in the future will have to live without natural resources, is it not our duty to cut such liberty to sustainable levels? So the only thing which can save humanity is our brain. A consciousness shift up to higher levels, knowledge has to win over dumbness. Problem is, IQ is going down worldwide while we need our thinking power the most. It seems we are entering a new enhanced dark age. P.S. All those grand solar minimum and ice age in the near future people could well be part of the merchants of doubt effort. They are muddying the water of clear-cut evidence-based science so that laymen can go to sleep and consume happily on with their lives. It is not like those people are Einsteins or Galileos who have the real scientific wisdom. Mostly they cook up strange soup of theories reminding one of the fringe, flat, and hollow earthers, sometimes even mimicking the Nibiru clowns. Yeah, and I agree. I think actually the closer those sites are to, I don't know, being based on genuine evidence or having some kind of, actual thought process involved with them, I guess the more normal they seem, the more dangerous it is, right? I don't know. Because they might seem believable to some people, but there's a lot of, unfortunately, there are a lot of people in the world who have limited means of access to knowledge, and so voila, here we have the internet, and all of these people who have limited means of access to knowledge in their own personal lives, i.e., maybe they didn't go to the greatest schools, or maybe maybe they are, were raised in a family that didn't necessarily value education as much as maybe other families do. I don't know. Whatever the reason is that they are low information folks, now they get on the internet and they find things that, make sense, kind of half-baked theories and half-baked ideas make sense to them. And then running down the road with this information. Here we go. This is what's really going on. And I guess, it's important to always remember that, everyone can level up in their information, in their thinking, in their smarts. Everyone can level up. Like, nobody is done learning. Nobody is done evolving. Nobody, so the problem is that, people who aren't very smart are the ones least likely to think that they aren't very smart. And there's an actual study on that. I don't know if you all have seen that, but scientific study that, dumb people don't realize that they're dumb, so they can't actually figure out that they need to get smarter, or they need to actually get a little more information in order to, but the point of change in anybody's life can happen at any time. So, you know, there's always hope, I guess. Moving on. Sorry, don't want to rant. Also, interesting comment from Fiesta Cranberry. Hi, Kevin. Just a couple of thoughts. This will be unpopular. If you really did want to start a new political party to save the environment at this point in time, I think it would need to concentrate all its efforts on the environment. That means leaving behind all the social justice warrior stuff. I understand that a lot of people are given a raw deal in our society, but things are so bad right now, we just don't have time to worry about men using the ladies' bathroom. But not generally prone to thoughts. I'm not generally prone to thoughts of conspiracy, but doesn't it seem odd to you that a lot of this kind of thing pops up during political campaigns when liberals like Bernie are starting to get too many followers? Think of how BLM kind of hijacked his speech that time. Remember gay marriage, how Gavin Newsom started it going and turned the country Republican. I kind of barely remember something about that, but I'm not too clear on what happened there. I think he single-handedly got Bush Jr. reelected. It just drains off too much money, energy, and time. The party would have to be absolutely tenaciously single-minded in its quest to bring down GIC. Nothing else will work. My other thought, or more like complaint, is that there's always a horrible, annoying, high-pitched feedback line on your videos. I'm sorry, guys. I don't know what's happening. I'm going to maybe figure out another mic situation. I killed my sound, and I'm hoping maybe that has, if there's a feedback happening in my with the actual video, right? Like the sound coming through my microphone and then into the computer, back out of the computer. Maybe that's what's happening. Trying it out. Interesting comment. And I did respond to this. Either you have to leave all other issues off the plank, or you have to include. I think that environmental justice, and I don't know if that's what we're looking for, or if that's what we're really about. Supposed environmental party. Is a branch on the same tree of social justice, and of equal rights and equal access for everyone. But yeah, I do agree that, if we're really going to tackle climate change, you have to be really very focused on that. The fight can't be about other things, or it can't be about like, what about this? 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 You really have to kind of like move all that stuff to the side. And I think that it has to be inclusive, for anybody who's willing to get into the fight and get into the movement. You really have to kind of include everyone. And I think it's an issue that could include everyone, right? Environmental climate change and climate science and environmental protection. What's difficult, and as evidenced by the article that I read yesterday about how, it's run its course or whatever, climate change as an issue or a topic, right? It's way below all the other issues, but yet it should be way above all the other issues. And so you'd have to really stress that it is way above the other issues. That's a hard selling point for it's a hard selling point for any political party, because people really want to make it about, what about the jobs, what about military, what about guns, what about blah blah blah. Like, everybody has their special interest, everybody has their platform, everybody has their thing, and also if you're really making it about holding down climate change and holding down the eventual destruction of everything on Earth, you really have to reiterate that point. Like, look, this is a problem. This is the problem. This problem is so huge that it actually, we're wasting time on this other stuff. We really all have to be together and united and unified in this, and that will create its own pushback that will create its own, you know, the forces stacked against climate change are already large. And if you actually had a political party that was solely about climate change, think about how gigantically that the gigantic foot that would come down on that against that party. And hey, you know, that's what we're up against. Anyways, food for thought, and thank you for all your great comments yesterday and today. maybe the slogan for the Black Bear Party would be punching climate deniers every day or something like that. I don't know. No, that's not the slogan. Jokes. That's a joke. I actually think that the shoot, where is it? You know, I think that, you know, the slogan would have to be, you know, peace and equality for everyone starts with making sure we have a planet to live on, or something like that, right? You know, if you want a way forward, and the way forward has to be equality and justice and, you know, rights for everyone. If you want that way forward, you really actually have to make sure that a future exists in which that future can exist, right? You know, you have to make sure that the planet is actually here and that we are alive. So maybe that's a way to engender, like, you know, carrying that torch forward for everyone, but not to get bogged down in, you know, minute little tiny. I think that's actually the problem. Why, you know, nothing ever gets changed is because, you know, we have these huge cultural debates about things, and, you know, they go on, and, you know, they become huge issues, and everybody's like, oh my God, you know, the outrage machine gets cranked up. Oh, this is terrible. But very, very little, if nothing at all, gets done. And so that is the actual problem, is that, you know, nobody can make a focused, sustained effort. There are, you know, this is a broad generalization, because there are people that are doing work and doing good work in social justice fields, and they are, you know, on the ground, and they are making differences all over the place. But the thing is that, you know, it becomes very, you know, the fight becomes very narrow, right? You know, you start trying to pinpoint little tiny things to change. You know, you start twisting dials and knobs and adjusting, you know, instead of this whole thing has to go, right? You know, and that's the thing, is like broad sweeping change has to be about not doing this, but doing this, you know, and how do you make that happen? I digress. I'm going to just try and read as many articles as I can read in this particular video without getting too bogged down. This is from March 20th, 2018, from the International Business Times. Glaciers will continue melting over the next 100 years. Nothing can stop it. All across the globe, climate change continues to cause an alarming number of glaciers to melt rapidly. In 2017 alone, we saw 2 massive icebergs, the Larsen C berg and the Pine Island berg, break off from Antarctica. Scientists now warn that this trend of glaciers melting is likely to continue unhindered for the next 100 years. The Paris Climate Accord saw 195 nations come together to pledge their support in limiting the global temperature rise to significantly below 2°C, if possible to 1.5°C, above pre-industrial levels. However, according to climate scientists Ben Marzion and Nicholas Champollion from the University of Bremen, along with George Kaiser and Fabian Mossian from the University of Innsbruck, even if we are successful in achieving the goals set out by the Paris Climate Accord, we would still not be able to prevent further glaciers from melting in this century. Melting glaciers have a huge influence on the development of sea level rise. In our calculations, we took into account all glaciers worldwide. Without Antarctic and Greenland ice sheets and peripheral glaciers and modeled them in various climate scenarios, Kaiser said in a statement. Around 36% of the ice still stored in glaciers today would melt even without further emissions of greenhouse gases. That means more than a third of the glacier ice that still exists today in mountain glaciers can no longer be saved, even with the most ambitious measures, Marzion said. Scientists estimate that every kilogram of carbon dioxide currently emitted will lead to 15 kilograms of glacier melt in the future. The researchers made calculations based on the functioning of an average newly registered car in Germany and found that for every 500 meters one travels by car, 1 kilogram of glacier ice will be lost. However, wow, that's a hell of a figure. Like, to think about, every 500 meters you drive your car, 1 kilogram of glacier ice will be lost. However, researchers say that when looking beyond the century, reducing global temperature rise to below 2C to 1.5C can make a very definite impact. Glaciers react slowly to climatic change. If, for example, we wanted to preserve the current volume of glacial ice, we would have to reach a temperature level from pre-industrial times, which is obviously not possible. In the past, greenhouse gas emissions have already triggered changes that can no longer be stopped. This also means that our current behavior has an impact on the long-term evolution of the glaciers. Should we be aware of this? Kaiser added. How's that for some fright night? Void sent me this, and I don't know if it's the same. He said he sent me a link, and I don't know if this is the same link he was talking about, but I'm going to read this. Very short abstract from Biogeosciences. The origin of methane in the East Siberian Arctic Shelf unraveled with triple isotope analysis. The Arctic Ocean, especially the East Siberian Arctic Shelf, has been proposed as a significant source of methane that might play an increasingly important role in the future. However, the underlying processes of formation, removal, and transport associated with such emissions are, to date, strongly debated. CH4 concentration and triple isotope composition were analyzed on gas extracted from sediment and water sampled at numerous locations on the shallow ESAS from 2007 to 2013. We find high concentrations of CH4 in the pore water of the partially thawed subsea permafrost of this region. For all sediment cores, both hydrogen and carbon isotope data reveal the predominant occurrence of CH4 that is not of thermogenic origin, as it has long been thought, but resultant from microbial CH4 formation. At some locations, meltwater from buried meteoric ice and or old organic matter preserved in the subsea permafrost were used as substrates. Radiocarbon data demonstrate that CH4 present in the ESAS sediment is of Pleistocene age or older. But a small contribution of highly 14C enriched CH4 from an unknown origin prohibits precise age determination for one sediment core and in the water column. Our sediment data suggests that at locations where bubble plumes have been observed, CH4 can escape anaerobic oxidation in the surface sediment. Okay. Link this below. Y'all can check this out. Man, y'all sent me some good stuff, and I want to read it all. Shattering mark set during Dust Bowl. U.S. just had hottest May ever recorded. If you thought it was strangely warm May, you're right. A strangely warm May. This is from today. Surpassing a mark set during the peak of the Dust Bowl in 1934, the continental United States just had its hottest May on record, thanks in large part to the human-caused climate crisis, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration announced on Wednesday. For May, the average contiguous U.S. temperature was 64.4 Fahrenheit, or 5.2 Fahrenheit above the 20th century average. NOAA observed in its breakdown of the new data, the first 5 months of 2018 were marked by large month-to-month swings in temperature. But when averaged, the contiguous U.S. temperature was 45 Fahrenheit, 1.6 Fahrenheit above the 20th century average, and was the 21st warmest January to May on record. The warmth was coast to coast. Jake Crouch, a climate scientist with NOAA's National Center for Environmental Information, said, in an interview with USA Today. While acknowledging that tropical storms, in addition to other climate anomalies, played a role in driving up May's average temperature, Crouch told USA Today that the man-made climate change contributed significantly to the record-breaking heat. In addition to surpassing the average temperature over the entirety of the month, May also saw more than 8,590 daily warm temperature station records broken or tied. NOAA notes. This was 18 times more than approximately 460 daily cold temperature station records during the month. Several of the daily records were noteworthy, including 100 Fahrenheit on May 28th in Minneapolis, Minnesota, the earliest such occurrence on record. Gee, you'd think it's getting warmer or something. All the people that came on the channel talking about it was a very cool April, and I replied to one of them, yeah, let me know. Let me know when you have the record warmth. Go ahead and drop a comment. I probably won't be hearing from them. Yeah. Moving on. I get, is this it? Is this the, no? This is not the last article. Okay, key step forward in cutting cost of removing CO2 from air. Okay. Opium, I think this is from Christopher. This is 3 hours ago, brand new, fresh off the presses. A Canadian company backed by Bill Gates, the eugenicist, says it has reached an important threshold in developing technology that can remove CO2 from the air. I'm making jokes, guys. Carbon Engineering has published a peer-reviewed study that's showing that they can capture carbon for under $100 a ton. This would be a major advance on the current price of around $600 per ton. The company says their immediate goal is to produce synthetic liquid fuels made from carbon and renewable energies. I have heard about this technology a few years ago, but I didn't know where it was. Technological fixes to the carbon emissions driving climate change have always been regarded with some suspicion by scientists. Plans to build solar shields in space or seed the seas with materials to soak up carbon have been seen as dangerous and a distraction to more mundane but difficult tasks of getting people to cut their emissions. However, plans to capture CO2 directly from the air have been regarded as somewhat more substantial, essentially mirroring the action of trees. Well, and also necessary if we're, talking about the reality of where we are in climate change. The idea was first developed by a scientist called Klaus Lackner in the mid-1990s, and since then, a small number of technology companies have built expensive prototypes of carbon-removing devices. Last year, a Swiss company called Climeworks unveiled a direct air capture installation that extracted carbon and supplied it to a neighboring greenhouse to fertilize tomatoes and cucumbers. How nice. Now, Canadian firm Carbon Engineering say they have taken a big step forward on cutting the costs of direct air extraction. Set up in 2009 with funding from Microsoft's Bill Gates and Canada Oil Sands financier Norman Murray Edwards. Okie dokie. Of course, he would be interested in this because their pilot plant has been running since 2015, capturing about 1 ton of CO2 per day. The process works by sucking air into a modified cooling tower with fans, where it comes into contact with a liquid that reacts with the CO2. After several processing steps, a purer stream of CO2 is extracted, and the capturing liquid is returned to the air contactor. Previous study carried out by the American Physical Society in 2011 suggested that cost per ton of direct air capture would be around $600. The Carbon Engineering say that by adapting existing technologies, they have been able to slash this significantly. This is a real step forward, and it's not just our company saying it. Professor David Keith from Harvard University and the founder of Carbon Engineering told BBC News, wow, okay, so all the names are there. All the players are there. I hope this changes views about this technology from being this thing which people think is a magic savior, which it isn't. Or that is absurdly expensive, which it isn't, to an industrial technology that is doable and can be developed in a useful way. Professor Keith's useful way is not to simply suck carbon out of the air, but to use the extracted gas as a key raw material for synthetic liquid fuel. The company is currently making around 1 barrel a day of combining the pure CO2 with hydrogen derived by water using renewable energy. What carbon engineering is taking to market is, first of all, carbon neutral fuels, in the sense that we are just another emissions cutting technology. There's no net removal from the atmosphere, he said. We see our long-term fuels plant as being roughly 2,000 barrels a day, but the next one we build will be the first real commercial plant, but will be 10 times smaller than that. We are developing that right now, looking for very cheap solar or wind power and looking for investors. Better than biofuel? The firm believes that this approach to liquid fuel has major advantages over biofuels, and that is it uses far less land and water. Professor Keith said that if their fuel gets the same subsidies as other carbon neutral approaches, then they will be able to raise funds and build plants very quickly. Others in the industry welcomed the fact that carbon engineering were bringing down costs, but felt that further incentives from governments were needed for carbon capture, utilization, and storage to achieve its potential. Although direct air capture costs around $100 per ton and is still somewhat steep, in our current situation where sticks and carrots for similar technologies are sorely lacking, the cost can only be brought down through further development and streamlining of individual technologies and conjugated processes. Edda Sif, erodator from Reykjavik Energy, told BBC News. She has been involved in a project in Iceland where CO2 from direct air capture is being turned into rock, deep underground. The biggest challenge we face is, however, from the words agreed on in the Paris Agreement must be followed by actions. The technical solution to climate change are already available, but national legislations do not provide enough incentive or obligations for them to be applied at a large scale. This must change quickly if we are to fulfill the Paris Agreement, she explained. Those involved in carbon engineering are acutely aware of the challenges. Professor Keith said there are hundreds of ways in which we can fail. However, he believes the question of decarbonizing aviation and heavy transportation cannot be met by electrical vehicles alone. The liquid fuels we need for better answers. For liquid fuels, we need better answers. This approach, CO2 from the air plus hydrogen you get from renewables to make fuels, that's the pathway. Study has been published in the journal Joule. As in joule of energy, I'm assuming. Or maybe not. Hey, it's frozen. Help. One last article, I'm going to read this very quickly. Pollution hits fungi that nourish trees, from the BBC News. Scientists are warning that pollution could be starving Europe's trees of vital nutrients by damaging essential fungi. Fungi live on the roots of trees, supplying them with minerals and water. Current pollution limits may not be strict enough to protect the forest fungi, said researchers. Signs of tree malnutrition, such as discolored and missing leaves, have been seen across Europe's forests. Loss of fungi may be a factor, according to the study published in the journal Nature. If we care about condition of our forests, what shape they're in, we can't just look above the ground. Dr. Martin Bidartondo from the Department of Life Sciences at the Imperial College London and Royal Botanic Gardens, Kew, told BBC News. We need to look below. We need to understand how the fungi are nourishing the trees. Fungi can be found on the roots of trees, providing vital nutrients and water. Known by the truffles and mushrooms formed by some species, they can live for decades beneath the surface, growing to several square meters in size. These fungi, known as mycorrhizal fungi, receive carbon from the tree in exchange for essential nutrients like nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium, which they take up from the soil. The researchers studied 40,000 roots from 13,000 soil samples at 137 forest sites in 20 European countries, including the UK, over 10 years. They found local air and soil quality have a large impact on the mycorrhizae. Trees need this fungi to get nutrients and water from soil, and there are factors like pollution that are affecting this fungi, said Dr. Laura M. Sues of the Royal Botanic Gardens, Kew, a co-researcher on the study. We need to be aware of it, at least because these fungi are essential for the growth and health of trees. The researchers say the first large-scale results should be used to design new studies into the link between pollution, soil, mycorrhizae, tree growth, and tree health. A major finding of the study is that European pollution limits may be set far too high, said Dr. Bidartondo. In North America, the limits are set much lower, and we now have good evidence they should be similar in Europe. For example, current European nitrogen limits may need to be cut by half. Our trees in Europe are not more tolerant than those in North America. Their fungi are just suffering more. The study looked at beech, oak, pine, and spruce trees across Europe, including several oak, pine, and beech forests in the UK. Fungi received little protection under conservation policies, which makes it hard to assess which species are rare or declining. And that is that. I made it. I made it through all these articles I wanted to read. Thank you always for your eyes, your ears, and your conscience. If you would like to donate to this channel, you can do so at the links below. Again, I appreciate all your comments and your interactions. Keep it coming. Until next time, peace.